Okay, so hi, my name is Hannah Cho. I'm an optometrist, and I'm here with Dr. David Golden to interview him and ask some questions that you guys were asking about. So let me do a quick rundown through his background. So this is stuff that I found on you online with my, super sleuth investigation. But
Okay.
So he graduated from UC Berkeley. Went to SECO and graduated from there, where soon after he became a full-time clinical faculty member, right? And then he has currently 2 practices that he owns, 4 that you manage.
We help manage, correct.
Okay. And then also he's really, really busy doing perk, which is, it seems like a very big chunk of it takes up a lot of your time.
Correct.
And also I'm going to ask him some more of the things that I found that I wasn't too sure of, like Virgin Lion. You can clarify on that. Then his hobbies include woodworking and also fishing.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
So we'll talk
So
a
small
little bit about
clarification.
that.
So I
Sure.
finished Berkeley in 3 years, so I didn't graduate Berkeley. I went directly into optometry school after 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that kind of summarizes what I'm starting to learn about Dr. Golden. Is he likes to do things very efficiently and on a bigger scale, which we'll go into a little bit later. So let's kind of start a little bit with an introduction. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got into your private optometry offices that you currently own?
Yeah. So my dad was an optometrist, and so when I went to optometry school, he had bought a practice here in West Covina, which is where the main office is now. And then he had his original practice in Whittier, and so he kind of said, if we don't get along professionally, then we would just be a family, and I would have my practice and he would have his. And so we ended up practicing really well together. We had very complementary skills, and so 20 years or so later, we still worked together.
Okay. Is he currently working still?
No,
or
he passed away about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so the 2 optometry offices, so you started this one called the one in West Covina then?
So I took it over. He had bought an existing practice. It was about 600 square feet-ish. When we took it over, it had 1 exam lane and 1 contact lens area and a little tiny dispensary. And so I took that over and then changed the way it was functioning. And that's what you probably have seen pictures, or you'll see pictures of that office. And it's just over 8,500 square feet.
Yeah, it's
today.
huge. Yeah. Big optical dispensary, lots of exam rooms. I think I counted almost 8 or 9.
9 lanes.
9 lanes, so it's very big. And then how's the Whittier office doing?
Whittier office is doing very, very well. So I have a partner in that. His name's David Ardaya, Dr. Ardaya, and Dr. Lynn, Ivy Lynn. And so the 3 of us run that practice, and it's still been in the same location now for over 50 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one is, you think, so I think the West Covina one is the one that's a lot more busy, it seems
By
like.
volume, it's 2.5 times-ish of any other office we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you manage to keep that running so smoothly and so efficiently in terms of office flow?
So I had really 2 very, very talented women that helped run the business for me. What you probably will find out in the interview is that I'm not a really detail-oriented nor operationally oriented. So Elsa, who you met, Elsa Martinez, is in the office. She's been there for like 30 years. Debbie, who just retired, Debbie Warren just retired. She was there for over 42 years. And so the 2 of them actually clearly understood the mission of the practice and where I was trying to take it. And it was a very defined kind of goal of mine to grow the business in a very specific way.
Okay. Do you feel like it's been growing exponentially, or do you think it's been a steady growth the whole time?
I think every practice has exponential years, and I think every practice has steady growth years, and every practice has, kind of flat years. Luckily, we haven't really had flat years per se, or negative growth years in the practices, but sometimes we grow faster than others, for sure.
And kind of related to that, how do you, and so we're shifting gears to more like the staff questions, just because I'm curious. How do you choose the right staff member? Like, how did you know Debbie was someone that you were going to keep for a long time.
Well, Debbie, we actually inherited with the old practice. And when I started practicing with my dad, he had two women that were very strong figureheads that were running the practices, kind of as office managers. And one said, there's no way I'm going to work with David. He's out there. He's super, energized, and I just don't think my personality fits. So he ended up finding a new job and had a great career, and we still are friends today. Debbie said, look, if I have to find another job anyhow and start new, I might as well try David first. And so we ended up having a great relationship for, over 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how do you retain good talent, do you think? Like, how do you keep them motivated?
I think it's the responsibility of the owner doctor to create a culture in their office that is sustainable for the practice financially, but is sustainable socially for the employees. Remembering that at the end of the day, that's much of their social life is actually in the practice or working with their colleagues.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you started Perk?
Sure. So, it all started actually in 2004. So I was diagnosed with a sarcoma, and I stopped working for a whole year. And I finished treatment and everything, and so I came back a year later, and I was not in a great spot. Mentally, you're kind of just, what do you want to do? I think I was 42 at the time, and it was a serious diagnosis, and I had young kids, and so I didn't know if I wanted to work anymore. I had certainly had done well financially, and probably didn't need to work too much after that.
Right.
And so I kind of floundered in the office saying, I don't know if I want to go back to work, not go back to work. And my wife just said finally in 2007, 2 years later, said, you need to go back to the office and work. And so I kind of dug in and I said, well, if I'm going to go to work, I want to build the business. And so I called my friend Howard Stein, who had been my father's friend, who had two big practices in LA. We pretty much had two of the biggest practices in Los Angeles. And I said, Howard, Dad just retired. What are you thinking? I actually was hoping to buy one of his practices, and he said, no, I'm not interested in selling, David, but let's work together. And so the two of us just started working together. And then a friend of mine said, hey, I hear you have a great program with Essilor. Can I be part of your group? And we didn't even know we had a group. We said, okay, sure, you can be part of our group. And then another friend called and said, I hear you have like the best pricing on Cooper Vision lenses and Alcon lenses and J&J, and can we just buy with you? And we said, yeah, we didn't care. It was just working together because we knew that the larger we could get, we would be better off.
Right.
And so that's how it started as a free model, because it was just cooperatively a bunch of friends working together. And, it's now almost 5,000 members, and we were lucky enough to join forces with Dr. Sacco and Dr. Frieder to grow the organization even better and create a sustainable enterprise.
How did you and IVA kind of merge together?
Well, they were doing the same thing that we were doing. We were focusing only on practices that did over $1 million in gross revenue. And we did that specifically because they function in different ways. They buy differently. They buy inventory of contact lenses. They can buy in strength in some ways. And so since my practices were all north of $1 million, we said, and Howard's were clearly that way too, we knew how we wanted to buy. And so if people wanted to fit into our category, it was great. Aaron and Richard were focusing on practices of all sizes. I mean, Aaron has a huge practice, but practices of all sizes, they really were working great, and they had a really good education platform. We were just a purchasing platform at the time. People were really just coming in because we are focused on two things. One of them is that large practices, good ones, and I think today you'll find this to be true as you do your world. There's one common thing about a big practice, and that is that they have an extremely talented practice administrator or managing the business on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Because the doctor just can't manage the business.
Right.
And so we decided that we would build an education platform for office administrators only. There was enough doctor education, there was enough other kinds of education, but there were a very specific group of people that the market was missing. And it's that talented group that is actually driving the independent profession.
Yeah.
And so that's where we hyper-focus. So Aaron and Richard were doing a lot of the doctor education stuff, and we were doing all staff and administration and education. And so it just made sense to put the two worlds together and offer a bigger platform.
Okay. So did you approach them, or it just kind of naturally happened?
I forget. I think both of us knew of each other.
Okay.
I had never met them, but we just kind of went out to dinner one day and said, what are you guys doing? And, we're stepping on each other's toes a little bit. And so we just decided to work together. And it was a great decision.
Yeah. Because I think IVA kind of targets a certain, I think more the south of $1 million
They were less than
practices,
$1 million,
so
most of them, but they had a lot of big practices in them too.
Yeah. And so you guys kind of joined together and kind of got a huge market share.
Yep.
So this was before Essilor acquired
Correct.
IVA, right?
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about how that happened, or?
Yeah, so we had started really the first business-to-business platform to build what everybody's talking about today, which is supply chain. And I went to my friend and partner today, Ken Green, and I said, Ken, I really need you to help us understand and build an online business, because we have to ultimately get independents to start functioning as a national chain together, staying independent. So we always kind of went back to this concept, and I studied the Ace hardware store model. It's the perfect model for independent optometry.
Okay.
Centralized warehouse, everything in your store comes from that warehouse, and everybody shares that warehouse. So they have 5,000 or 6,000 independent hardware stores, all buying from one centralized distribution. They all share a common name in general, but it's the local neighborhood hardware store. And that concept is still true in my mind today. We've got to get independents to share about 60% of the inventory on their boards and their contact lenses, and let them personalize their practice with 40%. And when we can get there, we will be one of the strongest forces in the industry, bar none.
That's exciting, because right now it seems like all the independents are kind of separated. We have to kind of join, because I feel like there's a lot of...
You hear in the market a lot of chatter about private equity, and we have a very fractured market, right? We're very disjointed. And we're disjointed by design, because we're all independent, we all think differently, we all think for ourselves on how we think it should best run our business. But if you really start to look at your business from a core standpoint, there's very little differences between the core of our businesses, and the core products that we should use can all be very common and leverage that purchasing power to all work together. And that's where we're trying to get to our members, is have them focus. And that's why we were always at one time with just one contact lens distributor. We were always with just two contact lens companies. We were only with Essilor across the time. So I'll come to the answer of why Essilor. So Essilor had the best products in the industry. I believe they still have the best products in the industry from a category standpoint. Independent optometrists, I believe, need to very much focus on brands that are very dedicated to their space. And the Verilux X series, the Crizal series, all of their product lines are not seen anywhere else. They're only sold to the independent channel. And that was hypercritical to both Howard and myself.
Right.
For the same reason that we believe our frame distribution program, while it has to have outside brands, the brands that we're building that are core just to only available to our members, I think are vitally important to every dispensary. I don't think you should even have a dispensary without some core products that are only available to you. Having said that, it's to every frame manufacturer's advantage to keep you independent. You're their most profitable sector. No one can negotiate by themselves like a large group of people. And so they're their most profitable section of the world. And that's why they don't want independents to buy together. It's not in their best interest in general. We're actually changing some of those dynamics with Luxottica is finally coming to the realization that they do need to work inside of our channel, that we're building this online platform to include Luxottica products, because in general, every practice, if you're going to be a retail provider, you have to have Ray-Ban. You have to have some of the best brands in the industry, so consumers that they want to, they know that they can get every brand. You should also have some very highly profitable brands that are yours only, and that are dedicated to quality and the same things that your practice is dedicated to. So why Essilor? We were their second largest customer. We were working to build a supply chain. I think every lens manufacturer knows that in order to get independents to a profitable state and be able to sustain themselves, have got to work inside a supply chain. They probably, I think at one day, the way we looked at it in our business, it never made sense to me that ABB Optical, Angel Alvarez, had this great idea and said, look, I'll put all the contact lenses in one warehouse. And a doctor just has to call that warehouse and we'll send any brand to you, right? It'll be efficient, a one-box solution. But for my practice, if I see 40 patients in a day and they each buy a different frame brand, I'm calling 40 different manufacturers for the frames to get it from here and here and here. And so I'm getting 30 or 40 boxes in.
Right.
It just is completely inefficient. And so it made sense to me to have a product offering in a warehouse that was centralized with a lab that had 60% of the frame offering for the practice is here. You have to go maybe get a high-end brand. Maybe you need, Lindbergh or Makita or Chrome Hearts or, Cartier. Those you'll have to do on your own, but the core of your business has to be really specific to a supply chain, or we just won't compete.
So you're talking about, let me see if I'm understanding. So supply chain meaning like a vertical control. Right. So from being, whatever frame's being manufactured, the lens part and putting it together, maybe. Correct. The lab.
Everything is in one site, right? Okay. So the inefficiency today is a doctor's patient comes into your office, and at the end of the day, it has to be good for the patient, right? If it's not good for the patient, right, it doesn't even matter, right? But let's talk about why you need to have this to get to your patients. Let's say a patient comes in on Monday, and you want to pick out, whatever, this Ray-Ban frame. And you say, okay, I'll order that frame. The frame, sometimes you'll order it. It comes to your office 2 days later. Hopefully you order it that day, maybe the next day, right? 2 days later, then you wrap it up, send it to the laboratory. So that takes another day. Then the lab takes whatever 3 days to make the job, 4 days, right, depending on how complicated it is. And then it ships to you the next day. By the time you really get that job, it's like 9 days later. Right. It's unacceptable from the consumer standpoint. From your patient standpoint, it's unacceptable.
But it's normal.
It's
common.
It's common, except in the big organizations. Why can Costco get a pair of glasses to you in 3 days? Why can Warby Parker get you a pair of glasses in 3 days? Because their frames, their lenses are all in one warehouse. It's one online order. So a doctor should just have to go onto the website, the Advantage website, put the patient's name, put the prescription, pick the frame, pick the lens, pick everything. It's all warehoused in our little warehouse in Dallas. They pick it, pull it, and ship it. And so that's not waiting for all the processes. Forget about the fact that you're making UPS wealthy. But you got to squeeze all those extraneous people who don't need their hand in the cookie jar. The shipping costs, right? The storage costs, this cost, the staff time to turn it around. When you start to really look at how much time and energy is spent with your staff ordering, checking the jobs in and things and then reshipping them out, it's too costly for us. We're not going to stay in business that way. We've got to work inside of a narrow supply chain. So do you typically have on your frame board then all the frames that you already have in the warehouse? Yes. Okay. So in Golden Optometric Group, in every practice that we have, we work for a 60% common inventory in all practices, whether it's in Playa del Rey, Marina del Rey, West Covina, Southgate, 60%. And then 40% is practice specific.
Okay.
And that's what I recommend for every practice out there. Just think if we, Perk, could get all 5,000 stores, offices, depends on how you define an office, to carry 200 frames of the same, we would be the largest purchase. I mean, that's 5,000 accounts. It's one of the biggest purchasers. And you have to keep the best-selling frame on the board. I mean, if you don't keep your best-selling styles on the board all the time, and you sell it to a patient on Monday, pull it off the board, Monday afternoon a patient may be looking for that style. And so we start to see capture rates in our industry erode. And that's why we as an industry are 57%. That means 4 out of 10 patients are walking out of your office, maybe never coming back to get a pair of glasses.
Right.
And so maybe some of those will never come to you anyhow to shop, but some of them would rather buy in your offices if you had the right merchandising and product.
Yeah, so a couple things I can think that benefits right away is that you always have the best-selling frame. So if someone's buying it, obviously maybe another person would want to buy it as well.
Correct. But think about it from your staff perspective. If they take the frame off the board, they pull the tag off, they take it out of inventory, and they shoot it over to the lab.
Right.
They have to get a new one, reprice it, put a new tag on it, and put it back on the board. You don't need that energy. That tag is there.
Right.
And so unless that frame is going out of style, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Right? And so that's how Advantage from a frame distribution is trying to manage an inventory.
What kind of frames does Advantage carry?
So today we have 5 brands that are specific to us, so that ProDesign built us a collection called InFace. We love it.
Okay.
Mondadica we have a private collection with Mondadica called Marimekko. We love that. We've been building 2 brands, Iconic and Public Eyeworks.
Okay.
Both of those brands have done very, very well, and we're excited with them. In general, we can offer a little bit better quality, if not a lot better quality, at a much better price point than they could get pretty much anywhere. They say, oh, I can buy frames that cheap anywhere. Yeah, you can, but you can't buy them with this quality.
Yeah.
And then there's a company called Match. We have an Image Cafe, which is another line. So we're working hard to build up our collections of exclusive brands, because we think the exclusive brands are the ones that are the most valuable to a practice.
Right. Absolutely.
And then you'll see mainstream brands like Champion and Nicole Miller, and the Luxottica product Ray-Ban will be there very shortly. And so we're very, very excited about all these changes, and we think it's my colleagues need to recognize that it's not about the frame. People say, well, you're in the frame business. No, I'm in the distribution business. We're in the supply chain business. We just happen to sell frames. And we just happen to sell good quality frames that are exclusive. But I'm in the frame business, but I don't sell frames. Yeah.
How do you market the frame lines that you have kind of private label to?
So we have 3 internal sales folks in Perk, and they call the offices. They have their accounts. We do showings at Vision Expo East and Vision Expo West.
Okay.
And then I travel all around the country and I talk about it
Sure.
At my little dinner meetings and regional meetings. So we have an entire kind of event platform, and we're always front of mind to try to tell doctors who we are, what we do, and some started and didn't like it, and then they retried it and they loved it. And so it's a learning process for me. It's been exciting for me because I've always been fascinated by the manufacturing and the retail and the distribution business. So
it's more B2B, not really B2C.
It is 100% B2B today.
Okay.
Our B2C platform is, we hope to have it done by the end of first quarter of next year.
Oh, excellent.
But Public Eyeworks is the first brand that is going to be online to that platform.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that. All right. So let's see. I feel like I could talk to you forever. if you were talking to somebody coming straight out of school, any tips, and they were interested in buying a practice or starting a practice, is there any tips that you can share for your success?
You know, I think my personal story is an interesting story, and it's one that you need to think about when you're buying a practice. And it really has to do with how strong the brand of the practice is in that community. So let me give you an example. So my first day in the office, I just graduated and I put a tie on and I was super excited to be there, and I was going to work with my dad that day, and so I went into an exam room, literally maybe the third or fourth patient of that day. I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Golden. I'm going to give you your eye exam today." And this kind of older, a little crotchety guy says, "Well, the hell you're Dr. Golden. You get out of here. You send your father. You're not going to touch my eyes." Mm. And so I realized from that moment, that literally the first day of practice, that I was never going to be Dr. Golden. That my dad would always be Dr. Golden, and that I needed to figure this out. And so I knew I needed to change the name from Sheldon M. Golden Optometrist to Golden Optometric Group. I needed to make it a destination for quality eye care, not a destination for Sheldon Golden.
Right.
And so we rebranded everything. So I go back to tell you today, if a young optometrist or any optometrist is looking at buying a practice, to see what that transition looks like, to see if it's so dependent on that one doctor that they've got to replace that doctor. It's always an uphill battle. Every time we've bought a practice from an existing doctor that had a strong personality, big brand loyalty in some way, it's a longer transition process. Mm-hmm. And so if the doctor is horrible, you want them out of the practice, right? Just have them stop working and you'll take it from there. But if the doctor has a lot of brand equity, take a long runway so that they can work and introduce you to patients along the way. And while you'll build it slower for yourself, it'll be more sustainable and much safer.
Right, better transition.
I think so. Yeah. So that would be my big takeaway.
Okay, that's good. And then I kind of wanted to ask you. So you have the 2 practices that you're owning, and there's a few other that you're helping manage. Mm-hmm. How does that look? What are you managing for those practices?
So when a doctor had worked for me for a long time and wanted to do their own practice, we said, let's just use my billing department and my accounting department and legal and marketing and all those things. So I feel like I run what's called a shared service team, right? So we have a shared service organization, and I'm responsible for that team, right? Actually, not anymore so much, because we have Dr. Ardaya and Dr. Wong, both in Whittier and West Covina, respectively, that manage that business for us, just because I'm in Perk so much. But they have a shared service team that's overseeing all the practices. So the doctors own their own practices, and then they pay a management fee to participate in our purchasing power and the way we run things.
Okay, so kind of you're taking care of all the details and the business kind of stuff.
People say it's like an MSO model, so a management service agreement, and that's really what we do.
Okay. Yeah. And it seems like it works. I mean, I saw the office. It's very structured and organized. You have like a separate billing department and you have a separate accounting department.
Correct.
Where they kind of focused on for all the offices.
Right.
Okay. Now it's kind of making sense what I saw.
So the only kind of guarantee is that we always switch to our software platform.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Oh, that's actually a good transition. What software do you think makes your office flow more efficient?
So we use CompuLink.
Okay.
We use CompuLink for a very specific reason. It was not because it was user-friendly, because we don't think it's that user-friendly. It serves its purpose. I think there's better software out there today. But at that time, it kept the accounting records separate for separate corporations, because we run 5 different corporations out of one shared service team.
Okay.
So to maintain HIPAA compliancy and separate hidden financial accountings.
Sure.
That was the one that we did. I think today I would move to a different platform.
Any that you would recommend?
I think the one I'm most impressed with is Uprise. It's probably the least embedded in the marketplace, but they've done the most to build a really solid online cloud-based business.
Yeah.
I can truly say that their electronic health record part of it is by far the best on the market.
Yeah.
The back-end office side is now par. It used to be very subpar, but now it's very par. So I like that one. I like Crystal. I hear is good. I don't have any experience except for Uprise because we're thinking about moving to the Uprise platform.
Okay. Yeah. Uprise, I saw it's very user-friendly. It looks really nice.
Yeah, so modern. From what I can tell, and after speaking to doctors who've transitioned, you know, CompuLink, we closed our office, each office for 1 week, solid to get it trained.
Yeah.
And then we slowed the office in half for a month to get it up and running. It was a hugely expensive proposition. I mean, West Covina, for example, sees 1,000 patients a month. So I think we probably only saw 300 or 400 patients that month. It's a big change to your profit structure. So it's very costly to change. In the practices and the doctors that have switched to Uprise that I've spoken to, it's been a 2 or 3 day process where they just snap it on and it works well. People understand it and they get up and running.
Okay.
So,
yeah. And then can you tell me a little bit of Verge Alliance, what that is?
So I'm passionate about our profession is being underutilized in the way medical vision, material vision, everything gets delivered to the marketplace. So I believe that the marketplace needs to re-engineer the way they use optometrists and ophthalmologists in the market. And so we started this concept where if we could convince a health plan to let an optometrist who's well qualified to manage all the medical part and triage whatever patients need to go, that we would have better outcomes, happier patients, more cost effective.
Yes, for both sides.
For both sides, for all sides.
Right.
And while we would be taking patients out of the ophthalmology practice, we actually would be making the partner ophthalmologist more successful.
Right.
So how does that work? So we've been working with a Medicare Advantage plan for now 5-ish years, maybe 6 years now. And we've clearly shown that if 100% of the cases can get into an optometry office where they have the proper equipment and doctors that are well managed, we can reduce the cost of care by about 35%. Patients are super happy, about a 94% patient satisfaction rate, which means that patients would be willing to refer their family or friends to the doctor's office. And we've cut the referrals by about 50%. So we make patients visually happy. They don't necessarily need to be 20/20 if they're happy at 20/30. Why do surgery? We're just not surgically oriented. So by taking and letting retina specialists treat the retina from day one on is much healthier for the patient, because they don't go from an optometrist to a general ophthalmologist who's going to treat the retina until he or she can't treat it anymore, or maybe goes just a little bit past where they should have, and then send it to the retina specialist to fix whatever problem they have, as opposed to letting the retina specialist manage the retina from day one when it needs a disease. So as you know, most diabetics, if they have retinopathy, it's pretty mild. Today we have technology that has been the great equalizer of care, meaning while in 30 years ago, the difference in training between ophthalmology and optometry was drastic, and it was different only in terms of the volume of patients and the experiences that they had. It's not that ophthalmologists were any smarter than optometrists, right? But today, technology has equalized, so we're all reading the same data. And that data is telling us where to go next, what to look at next. So while there are some clinical guidelines, the technology is driving the process.
Right.
It's not the experience that's driving the process. And so because of that, optometrists are the most appropriate provider at the most appropriate cost for the majority of health plans, way before they get to an ophthalmology office. And so that is the business model of Verge. And I'll work on that until the day I'm done, because I just fundamentally think it's the right way to do business. It's the same efficiency. I mean, I got very caught up into, you're not even old enough, probably OD Lean. Do you know what OD Lean is?
Is it a
Johnson & Johnson started this program. They don't even have it anymore, but it was lean processing. It was Six Sigma processing, how to take care of patients throughout the process and the practice. And I was always interested in that efficiency of running patients properly through a practice. The same thing is that efficiency of running a dispensary through a supply chain like Advantage. The efficiency of running patients through a system where it's opticians and optometrists and ophthalmologists and retina specialists is, I believe, the only way we're going to be able to manage populations well.
I think that mindset that you have is very rare, where you see it can be any business. Like you'll stop into, I don't know, like a yogurt shop. Do you automatically just think, oh, this needs to be done better, or this, I can streamline this? Is it kind of like a constant?
Well, I wish I could say I was down at that level. Sometimes I can, but visually I see opportunities in a business.
Yeah.
But I need people like Debbie or Elsa that ran my businesses, or in this case, I have Chelsea helping me, or Jessica Hall who runs Perk. Operationally, I need people to help me operationalize whatever I'm thinking. But yeah, I think I look at businesses very differently.
Yeah, like it seems like you kind of are the big picture, the big vision, and then you're very good at delegating it to the right person to kind of carry it out.
Well, let me say, if I didn't delegate, it would never get done.
Right.
It's just the way I work.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I completely. I feel like I
You connect?
Yeah.
I do a talk for the optometry schools on leadership and understanding what kind of leaders. And some people are leaders from a visionary standpoint, and some people are leaders from an operational standpoint. You know, those visionaries are the ones that set where the practice needs to go, but they don't necessarily know how to get there.
Exactly.
And that's why most big optometry offices have good vision leaders, good optometrists at the top knowing where they have to go, but then they have these really talented practice administrators that can operationalize what their vision is.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of things, a lot of the big practices, typically the visionary optometrists are not really practicing. They're kind of just acting as CEOs in that practice, kind of.
You know, that's true, but there's a lot of really talented optometrists that do both. I'm not good at doing both per se, so I stay more on the business side, but I still see patients occasionally.
Yeah, 2.5 days. What was it, a month? All right. So kind of to wrap things up. These are a little bit more lighthearted. What's the best business book that you would recommend that you've read?
The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Okay. Because I think people get frustrated with when they have an idea. They just have to figure out what that tipping point is, and then it'll be a good business. Okay,
yeah, that's a good book. And then another question is, what's the best $100 that you spent in the past month? What's the best purchase?
Best $100.
Yeah.
Well, I bought a lure for marlin fishing, and we just hooked our first marlin on my new boat. So that was the best.
How big was the marlin?
It was probably 125 pounds. It was a small marlin, but it was fun.
It sounds big.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, let's see, the last question I had was the best advice that you've gotten from a mentor.
I would say believe in yourself, believe in your capabilities, and stay to it. Yeah. And my dad taught me this early on, and I think that's why I'm a serial entrepreneur and always interested in finding businesses. But he says, don't worry about failure. Just worry about the risk, meaning don't risk your entire world, but always risk a certain amount of your world to do something that you're passionate about. And, you know, it started in my first company that I started in 1996 when we had a laser surgery company and sold it to a Canadian outfit. You know, it was a big risk at that time for me, and it worked out. I mean, I've had other risks that have not done well. So I think that's the big difference between an entrepreneur and a business guy or a corporate business person. Entrepreneurs really rarely care about failure. They're always willing to fail because they know they'll just change the way the direction of the company goes a little bit. They'll tweak it one way or the other. Whereas most business guys that just think about business, failure is not even, they want to stay so conservative that they don't fail.
Yeah.
And I think you have to work outside those lines.
Yeah. Okay, serial entrepreneur, I think that's a word that really well defines what you are, for sure.
Yeah.
Just thinking. And was that, when you're talking about, is that the Eris Vision
Yeah.
Institute? Okay, I was going to ask you about that. I forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
welcome.
It was
Thank
really,
you for
really
having me.
informative. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. And then if Dr. Golden has some time, I'll go ahead and forward some of the questions to him. But yeah, thank you so much. This was really fun.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.